Om Swastiastu, Miss Rizka, and all of my friends. In today's presentation, we're gonna talk about overview of interpretation and interpretation versus translation. Our material for today's presentation is 1. Definition of interpretation, 2. Advantages of interpreting, 3. Disadvantages of interpreting, 4. Interpreting versus translation, and the last is implication. But before we move to our material, let we to introduce ourselves each other.
My name is Wayan Ira Dharmaswari.
My name is Kadek Winda Dwimayanti.
My name is Intan Nuraini.
Okay, the first material is about overview of interpretation. The next slide will be delivered by Intan. To Intan, time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the time that given to me. I want to explain you about definition of interpretation. Interpretation is essentially mean an extempore or a reproduction in one language of what is said in another language. Interpretation is not merely a linguistic undertaking but communication of linguistic proficiency and encyclopedic knowledge. And then interpretation is like being a live language, right? When someone is speaking in one language, an interpreter listens carefully and instantly says the same thing in another language. It's not just about knowing the word, it's more like a combination of linguistic skill and deep knowledge. So interpretation is not just about translating word, it's about instant live and highly skilled language communication that involves that understanding, cultural sensitivity, and knowledge of the subject matter. Next. Okay, this material will be delivered from Winda. Winda, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the time that given to me. In this slide, I would like to explain the advantages of interpreting. The first is enjoy more freedom than the translator. Why? Interpreters have more flexibility in how they convey a message because they can adapt it to the situation and audience, whereas translators have to stick closely to the written words. Number 2, concentrate on the sense of message rather than the words which conveyed. Interpreters focus on conveying the meaning and content of what's being said, not just translating word for word. This makes it easier for people to understand. Number 3, get helpful aids from the intonation, gesture, and facial expression of the speaker, Densis nonverbal language. Interpreters use the speaker tone of voice, body language, and facial expression to understand and convey the message accurately. The last is occasionally ask the speaker to repeat a word, a phrase or a sentence, or explain some points required less precision than that of a translator. Interpreters can ask for clarification if something isn't clear, which is different from translator who can do that. Interpreting doesn't require the same level of precision as the translation. In summary, interpreters have more flexibility, focus on meaning, use nonverbal cues, and can ask for clarification, making their work different from that translator. Next slide, please. In this slide, I would like to explain about these advantages of interpreting. By doing interpreting, the interpreter will face the first is stress. Why we can say stress? Interpreters need to pay close attention, absorb information, and accurately reproduce it. This can be mentally taking. Interpreters must quickly grasp the essential meaning of a statement and find the right way to express it, which requires significant cognitive effort. If an interpreter is not well prepared or familiar with the subject, it can lead to stress and potential error. Number 2 is pressure. Unlike written text, spoken language is fleeting, so interpreters must convey the message in real time. Interpreters need to analyze what's being said and synthesize it into another language almost instantly. There is no time for revision. Interpreters must communicate immediately. The pressure of performing under time constraints and in front of audience can be psychologically demanding. Number three is about overall test of linguistic competence. Interpreting between language with technical phonological, syntactic, and semantic differences, like English and Indonesian, can be challenging due to variations in a word choice, sentence structures, and meaning. Lack of general cultural background knowledge. Interpreter may encounter topic of cultural references they are not familiar with, making accurate interpretation difficult. The last is different accent. Dealing with speakers who have varied accent can make interpretation more challenging, as the understanding and conveying spoken word accurately can be affected by strong or unfamiliar accents. In summary, interpreting is a demanding task that requires intense concentration, quick thinking, and a deep understanding of both the source and the target language. Interpreters must also manage stress, time pressures, and potential language differences, making it a challenging but crucial skill. Okay, the next material will be delivered by Ira. To Ira, time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the time that given to me. So for this slide, I would like to explain about interpreting versus translation. So here I provide to you four difference between interpreting versus translations. So the first one is interpreting refers to spoken transfers, while translation refers to written language of meaning between two languages. So, for interpreting, this is like a language help. And interpreters listen to someone speaking in one language and quickly speaks the same message in another language. Think of this as a real-time spoken translations. For example, in a conversations between someone who speaks English and someone who speaks Spanish, and interpreters help them to understand each other by translating spoken word instantly. And for translations, it is like a language help in writing. A translators work with a written word. They take a document written in one language and create a new document in another language. Make sure the meaning stay the same. For example, if you have a book in French and you want to translate into English, a translations will carefully rewrite the entire books in English. So, interpreting is about spoken communications, while translations is about written communications, but both of them essential for breaking language barriers. And then the second one is interpreting occurs in real time, and translations is the transfers of meaning from text to text, written and recorded. For for interpreting happens right when a people are talking. It's like having a language guide with you when you are having a conversation. These persons listen to what someone say in one language and quickly say the same things in another language. It is like an instant language guide to help people understand each other when they are speaking. And for translations is more like carefully language makeover for written things. When you have a book or document or any phase of writing in one language and you want to in another, a translation does this job. They take a text and rewrite it into a way that keep the meaning the same but change the word to the new language. It is like a mixture, a story or informations stay the same but looks different in writing. So, interpreting is about talking and listening, while translations is about reading and writing. both are why to help a people communications when they are not speak the same language. And then number three is interpreting is a held to a different standard of accuracy than translations. So for interpreting, it's like a live show. An interpreter listens to someone speaking in one language and quickly translate into another language because it's happened in real time. There might be some small mistake because it is so fast. And for transitions, one on the other hand, it is like a book. A translation carefully takes written words from one language and rewrite them into another language. This process is slower and allow for more accuracy because they can take their time to make sure everything is just right. So, while both interpreting and translations, I'm for accuracy. Interpreting might have slight imperfections due its a fast nature, while translations get more perfect because it's done at slower. And then number four is interpreting. Interpreter has no time to refine their output in a translations, but translator has a time to polish their work. So for interpreting, is a held to different standard of accuracy than translations. In translations, translator has time to polish their work, but in interpreting is like fast relay race. An interpreter listens to someone speak in one language and quickly paste on the message in another language. They don't have much time to perfect it, so there might be some small mistake. But for translations, on the other hand, it's like a writing a carefully create letters. A translation takes their time to trans a document from one language into another, so they can refine and polish their work, making the work is more accurate and precise. So in the short, is interpreting happen quickly and doesn't allow for much time, while translations is a slower process that allow more accuracy and polish. So for the next slide will deliver by my friends Intan. So for Intan, the time is yours.
Okay, Ira, thank you for the time. The next material about implication. Implication is translation need to be familiar with the rules of written language and be competent writer in the target language. Interpreter need to master the features of oral language and be good speaker, which includes using their voice effectively. And then translators are like writers. They need to know the rules and detail of how to write well in the language they are translating into. It's almost like being a good author. They take their time to turn written word from one language into another language, making sure it's well written. And then the first is written language skill. Translators primarily deal with written documents, so they need a deep understanding of the rules and nuances of the written language in both the source or original and target of translated language. This includes grammar, punctuation, and writing style. And then the second is writing proficiency. They must be excellent written in the target language. This means they cannot only translate words but also capture the tone, style, and cultural content of the short text. Their writing should be clear, coherent, and convey the original message accurately. And then the third is research skill. Translators often include unfamiliar terms of concept in the short text. They need strong research skill to find the right equivalence in the target language. And interpreters are more like live performance. They have to understand spoke language really well and be excellent speaker themselves. It's not just about the word. It's about using their voice effectively, like actor or public speaker. They quickly turn spoken word from one language into another without a script. And the first is oral language skill. Interpreters, especially spoken communication, they must be skilled in listening, understanding, and quickly conveying spoken word from one language to another. And then the second is speaking proficiency. Effective interpreters are not just but also good speaker. They not articulate the translation clearly, fluently, and with proper pronunciation in the target language. This involves using their voice effectively to convey tone and emotion. And then the third is thinking on their feet. Interpreter work in real time, often in high pressure situation. They need to think one on their feet, making quick decisions about how to express complex ideas accurately and concisely. So translation are matter of written language and skill writer, while interpreter excel in spoken language, speaking proficiency, and the ability to think and communicate rapidly in real time. Both roles require a deep understanding of both the source and target language and culture to convey meaning accurately. Okay, we'll continue from Ira. Ira, the time is yours.
Okay, so for the end, I would like to tell you the conclusions of our presentations today. So the conclusion is interpreting is like speaking on the spot in one language, what say in another's, while translations influence writing text. Interpreting lets you focus on the message meaning, but it's stressful and demanding, requiring strong linguistic skills. The main difference is speed. Interpreters need to be faster than translators and have knowledge of spoken language and specialist terminology. So for the next slides, we'll deliver by Winda. So for Winda, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ira. Okay, guys, that's all from our presentation. We do apologize if there is inconvenience during the presentation. And the last, we would like to say thank you to your attention. I would like to wrap up this presentation with Paramasanti. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om.